Hi everyone, this is Sudha with OT Lifestyle Solutions here again. I just wanted to talk to you tonight about living well at home and aging in place with tips for your living room area. So first of all, the National Association of Home Builders recommends that you leave a 5 by 5 space, if possible, in the middle of your living room area to allow for accommodation for like a wheelchair or a walker. And there should be about 2 feet between like your coffee table and your recliner chair or chair that you're going to be sitting in. One of the things definitely is to look at reducing clutter. Now, let's talk about furniture in the living room. Really, some of the things to take into account is some of the design of the furniture. You don't want outward shaped legs that stick out past the surface, the top surface of the coffee table. Or the chairs, because these become things that are very easy trip hazards. You can see that outward surface, but usually can't see the legs, so you can trip over them pretty easily. You also don't want your end table that you're going to be putting your drinks or your book on too far away, that you're reaching out too far, that you're likely to fall when you're trying to get that. The other piece is stable. So one of the things are things like rocking chairs that become unstable. It's really hard if your balance is off. So thinking about what are stable chair options that you can use. And then the other thing is these hardwood floors that are polished, and some of the chairs or the rugs that will slide on it. So you want those to be stable and really have them firmly on the floor surface. The height of the sitting surface. Interestingly, as I go around and measure sofas in people's homes, I find that the sofa is about 15 inches for the sitting surface off the floor. Or, you sit on it and the cushion drops down. Well, if you think about a dining room chair, that's about 17 inches tall. For most people, that 17 to 19 inches is a fairly easy and comfortable height to get up off. If it gets lower than that, then you're going to kind of notice that it takes much more effort to get up and out of the chair. And so that's something you might want to think about. There are certainly little furniture raisers that are safe, that are wooden blocks that you can put your furniture up on, that would make the surface higher if you can't get higher sitting furniture. The other piece is, depending what else you have in your living room for furniture, often we have knick-knack cabinets, maybe a bookcase, maybe a bureau, a large sideboard, or things like that. What you want to do is make sure those are fastened securely to the wall so that they're not likely to topple if you need to grab them for support, or if you're reaching and then they're likely to fall because you've put more weight on them. So those are really key. The other thing with furniture design is actually looking to avoid sharp corners, so that if you do happen to fall, or as we age our skin gets a little more frail and thin, that you don't want to be cutting that, causing damage or injury when you fall. So trying to look more for furniture that has that rounder, softer corner look on it. The other thing that occurs a lot in the living room area is electronics. Are you looking at computers? Is this where you're going to use that? What about TV? What about sound systems? The other thing is then that big collection of remotes. So this is where you want to look at what are really your habits. What do you need for remotes? Can you get a universal remote that's going to control several of the items? Definitely those are things to think about. The other thing is those small buttons. Start thinking about a universal remote that has larger buttons or backlit buttons, so that it's easier to see and easier for your fingers to not slip off and get something else. On the TV, thinking about opting for closed captioning, so that if you are experiencing some hearing difficulties, you can also see the words, and that will help you out. One of the other things that recommended is to opt for the largest TV you can fit in the space, but you want to have the correct sizing for the space. A lot of your TV sales places have expertise on that. You can look up those guides online as well. But really thinking about getting the correct size TV for the room, but the biggest size that you can get, making it easier, making you less likely to be squinting or doing other things. As you're looking at moving around in the room, you want to keep your access ways nice and clear. You also want to make sure there's no throw rugs in that way, in the way. If you have a small rug, you want it to be a really low pile. You want it to make sure all the edges are down. The other piece of that is if you've been recommended to have a mobility device, whether it's a walker or a cane, you want to make sure you have room to use it and that it's where you are going to use it. So there's a place to put it beside where you're sitting. The other thing is sometimes it's really hard getting out of the chair that we've talked about. There are several options now to add like an armrest or a pull-up bar or something near that chair to help you with getting up and down. There are also options for power-assisted recliners that can help you stand up. So thinking about those potential options and thinking in advance if that's going to be an issue for you. In terms of the flooring surface, obviously this is where you don't want high pile carpet or actually even the really thick underpadding, because you sink into that and it makes it harder to use a mobility device. It makes it harder to lift your foot up. If your legs are weak, it's going to be difficult if you're dragging a foot over that carpet surface, even with a thicker underpad. You want to make sure all those surfaces are in good repair. You don't want cracks in linoleum or tears in the carpet, or again, as we talked about yesterday, carpet that's stretched out and you've now got waves or ripples in it. The other piece again is to think about, are you looking at using harder surface flooring? Hardwood is definitely one option. We'll talk a little bit about that in a minute. The other hard surface that is very popular right now is the luxury vinyl planking or luxury vinyl tiles. They can be actually waterproof, and you can get them where they're got an increased friction coefficient so that they're actually slip or fall resistant, which is really helpful. The other piece with that, with the hard surfaces, they definitely reduce your risk of falls. They're definitely easier to clean. They can be a bit harder to fall on if you actually do fall, and you may have a higher risk of an injury, but you've got less chance of falling, so that's a good thing with that. Though you tend to put the throw rugs on, so again, that's where you want to be careful of the throw rugs. The other thing with flooring, and particularly if you're using things like tile or hardwood, is the glare. You can get those shiny floor surfaces and they look beautiful. You know, some of those stained woods are gorgeous with this high gloss finish. But as we age and the windows are open, glare is going to be even more of a problem for us as we try to see and see what's happening. So just be aware of that and try to look at floor surfaces that don't have glare. One of the other things to think about is access for communication options. How can I call for help? Is there access to a phone? Generally, a lot of places, people are opting not to have landlines anymore. And there's actually pros and cons to that, because the landline's focused in one place. If you have a cell phone, you can carry it with you. So thinking about where's a good place to carry it. If you have a walker, is there a bag on the walker? If not, think about getting one. Thinking about, do you have fanny pack? Do you have a way of carrying that? The other piece with that is when the phone rings, we tend to feel like we have to rush immediately to answer it. Thinking about, there are times when it's not convenient. If it's important, you'll be able to call them back. They will have left you a message, right? So those are things to think about as you plan that. Safety pendants are another good thing to think about, the life alert, the alert systems as we age. A lot of, if you're moving to some of the health insurances now, they will cover some of the cost of those things. So asking about that when you're talking about health insurances. The next thing that's really important in this area is lighting. as we age, we need more light. It gets harder and harder to see things with less light. And so what you want is really good general ambient lighting. A lot of American living rooms don't come with ceiling lights and don't come with good ambient lighting options. And so thinking about how can you do that? What does that look like? Do you need to put in more lights? And then if you're doing specific tasks, like you're going to be reading in a chair, do you have specific task lighting that's adequate? And then, of course, if you're going to be running lamps everywhere, you want to make sure those cords are out of the way, that you're not going to trip over those, that they're taped down and they're out of your walkway. The other piece I find is that light switches, particularly if we're talking about lamps, are hard to turn as our hands get weaker or have arthritis. They're also often in awkward places, behind the coffee table, behind the side table, and we have difficulty reaching them. So one of the things I would recommend is we think about things like voice activated or remote activated light switches, lighting options for like lamps. Alexa is an easy, simple one with a smart bulb in that you can turn on and off. If you're looking at light switches, instead of those little pokey ones that you have to kind of use, have a rocker switch option, which is very easy to use. You can use your hand much easier than just using your fingertip on that. And then potentially even having automatic timers. I mean, most of us are creatures of habit, and so we could have an automatic timing system, or even use Alexa and smart bulbs to actually turn those lights on and off at set times. The other thing again to remember is that frosted bulbs can reduce the glare that you can get from some of the lamps and lights, and even a frosted lampshade may do that as well. One thing to think about is, what are you going to do in the living room? A lot of us get into the habit of eating in front of the TV, and so thinking about how are you going to transport food there if you're going to do that? What surface are you going to put it on? Planning ahead for those things for eating. Is this where you need to have a little cart that you wheel out from the kitchen area or push ahead of you in front of a walker that has those things on it? Are you going to work on puzzles, games, reading? What does that look like? You need to plan ahead, because staying active, both cognitively, physically, and socially, are really important for us to age well. So part of planning for retirement and planning for aging is actually planning for activity. It's really sad when I see a lot of particularly men who have always gone up and gone to work, and then all of a sudden they retire and they don't have that structure anymore, or that reason to get up, or those activities to be engaged in, because they've always been busy working. Thinking about this is a really important component of what's happening, but setting up a space where you can do those activities or tasks. Temperature control is another one. Having adequate methods for heating or cooling, controlling the temperature. Also, making sure that it's easy to operate those, that it's easy to turn them on and off, and that you know how to get them serviced and when to get regular service. And what happens if the power goes out, for options that are safe. Thinking about voice or remote controlled options for thermostats, for blinds, even for curtains, that are going to allow you to be able to safely operate those systems. Vertical blinds are definitely better than horizontal blinds for keeping the dust off and keeping them clean. Also, you can get those to operate easily on systems that you can reach. Thinking cleaning is one thing to think about with that, because it's really difficult at times to get up and reach particularly the top layers of the vertical blinds. That brings me to vacuum cleaners. Those little automatic robotic cleaners now are great because you can program them at set times and they'll keep the surface area clean, keep the dust down. They will also, you can also have things like stain resistance, carpeting, stain resistance, furniture coverings. One of the other things that dusting collects on everything. I mean, it doesn't matter where you are, dusting really collects on things. Thinking about using maybe glass curio cabinets, glass fronted for your best china, so that way it reduces the dust and the number of times you have to dust or clean items. Keeping clutter clear, and if this becomes difficult, getting assistance, recruiting family members to help out once a month when they offer what to do for Christmas or gifts. Ask them to either pay for a one-off cleaning service or come and volunteer for a couple of hours to help you with that. Those are all key things. So something to think about. What other things can you think about in terms of making the living room area a safe place as you age, so that you can live at home and live well for as long as you can? So put it in the comments below. Let me know what you thought of some of the hints in this video, and see if you have any other ideas that are also helpful. All right, till the next time, this is Sue Doyle with OT Lifestyle Solutions saying live well, live long at home.